There we go. There we go. All right. Good morning. I've been away for a little bit, and so have to get reused to technology, I suppose. But welcome. Happy Monday morning. So we're going to be working with St. John's Wort today, and this is perfect timing because I just got last week while I was gone, I got a new batch of hi Silly Rabbit, hi Teresa, hey Rosa, good afternoon. I got a new batch of fresh St. John's Wort that's waiting for me right now. 5 pounds from Friends of the Trees, which is the Washington organization that I got that batch of Western Arnica from, that I made the Arnica oil with. So they just sent me a whole bunch of St. John's Wort fresh. So what I will be doing today is garbling and processing all of this fresh St. John's Wort to make more of the oil and the tincture, which can only be made with fresh plants. So I'll probably do some type of a Instagram thingy to document that, because not everyone has access to or knows what to do with the fresh plant. So, but that's going to be my afternoon. Oh, Abahita. Oh, thank you. I just spent a number of days in the redwood forest in Northern California, a couple of days up there, surrounded by kids and fiddles and dance and all of that. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good today. And I get to drink St. John's Wort with you all. So St. John's Wort is our plant today. I don't have any black pens. Black pens. Can you read that? That's pretty light. I'm going to try some things more. Can you read that? Is that too light? Yeah, Teresa, I don't have it growing here. St. John's Wort does not grow in Southern California. There was actually a concerted effort to impede St. John's Wort growing in California. It was illegal for quite a long time to bring in seeds or plants or anything. Eradication of St. John's Wort was the goal in California until very recently. But even now, Southern California, it's too dry, it's too hot. So St. John's Wort doesn't grow here abundantly everywhere else. But that's why I had to pay a lot of money to have them harvest it there and ship it overnight with ice packs here. So yes, but yeah, I envy those people who get lots of St. John's Wort as a weed, right? It's just as a weed. Okay, so St. John's Wort. Now, Hypericum perforatum. This is the official species. There are a lot of species of St. John's Wort that grow in a lot of different areas. Is it medicinal? There's also a lot of ornamental St. John's Worts. If you go into a house plant, a nursery that has houseplants, you will often see St. John's Worts that are grown just for ornamental purposes, because they're beautiful and they've selected those flowers to be big and beautiful and abundant. But as we have talked about before with plants, when you're selecting for a certain trait, any medicinal properties might go by the wayside because you're not looking at those. You're looking to get that bloom bigger and bigger and bigger. And is the hypericin and hyperforin content high? I don't know. I'm just looking for pretty flowers, right? So, and then a lot of the wild plants just tend to not be medicinal. One of the primary tests that I know of to check to see if it's medicinal is that you squeeze the flower. When the flower emerges, crush the flower and look on your fingers. Your fingers should turn red. That red color on your fingers is an artifact of, it shows the presence of hypericin and perforin and hyperiphorin. And we'll look at those later. A flash. And it shows that it is likely medicinal. Go ahead and use it for medicine. If it doesn't go red, is it going to be helpful? Don't know. Is it going to be medicinal? Don't know. Is it going to be toxic? I don't know. It doesn't grow around me and I'm just not familiar with it. So you'd want to do a little bit more research with someone, an herbalist, hopefully in your area, that would have more information than I would. But just be mindful of that. There are lots of different species, lots of cultivars. They're not always going to be medicinal. I can read. Oh, Cynthia, thank you. Not too light. Good. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Okay, so, but if you see Hypericum perforatum, that is a medicinal plant, a medicinal species. It's not the only one. Lots of wild medicinal species. I'm just saying. Okay, so it has its own family, Hypericaceae. Is the family. All right. And we use the flower and the foliage, the aerial portions, the flower primarily, but the leaf has medicine too. And this is an area of debate amongst herbalists. Do you want only the flower or do you want flower and leaf? I'm a flower and leaf kind of person. I like the flower and leaf. I like the presentation of the whole plant. There's no toxicity there. There is medicine that is obviously not available in the flower. It's right there. It's going to be composted. Why not use it? So that's the side of the debate that I fall on. Information that I share is going to be from that debate. That's going to be important because there are people who disagree with me, and we'll talk about that when it comes up. Right now, we're just going to be drinking the tea. Teresa, when the dried turns red, is it useful? Yes. If you can get freshly harvested dried, so the St. John's wort that we carry in the apothecary here is from Oshala Farms, and I mean it looks just like St. John's wort. They're yellow flowers. They're just beautiful. It's gorgeous. There are also some leaves in there. And if you buy it freshly dried and you make a tincture out of it, quite often that tincture will turn red. And if that red shows up, it's an indicator that yes, there is still active hypericin, hyperforin, hyperiphorin in there. It is not the only therapeutic compound. And we'll go into that again as when we go into the chemistry after we do the tasting. It's not the only constituent. It's just a marker constituent, right? So I'll see if I can. So the darker marker that I had, wasn't a flat point, so it was a thin line. Let me see. Thank you for letting me know that. I should have. How about the blue? It's a thinner line, but it's darker. I'm sorry, I should have grabbed, I have like billions of black thick ones in the apothecary. Why the apothecary? Don't know, because I don't do videos from there anymore, and yet there they are. Yeah, you have to buy it. So you can test if it's been dried for a while. Those markers are going to degrade because they degrade upon drying. Generally, even freshly dried, you can't make an oil from. Oils tend to only make good medicine from the fresh or wilted plant material. Freshly dried can make a tincture. Long-term dried makes a tea, and that's what we're using today. And there is medicine there, even though you'll notice it's not red, right? Because the red compounds are lipophilic. They are They are oil soluble. Lipo means oil and philic means loving, right? So they love oil and alcohol, high proof alcohol. So being lipophilic, we wouldn't expect a tea to turn red, right? That's not the chemistry that's going to be extracted here. But the red is a marker of specific constituents. It does not represent the whole of the chemistry of the plant. So is a tea therapeutic? Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. Does it have hypericin in it? No, it doesn't. And we can see that organoleptic testing using our organs of sense to test for constituents. I can see, and you can see, that there is no hypericin in a cup of tea. None, not going to be there. Can't make any claims associated with hypericin for this cup of tea because there's no hypericin here. Is it therapeutic? Absolutely it is. So why I'm pounding this into you is because a lot of the research and a lot of the focus on St. John's wort is on standardized extracts that are standardized for hypericin content, and some of them also for hyperforin and hyperforin. Well, not for hyperforin, but hypericin and hyperforin. You can actually tell the quality of an extract by, is it only extracted for standardized for hypericin? Is it standardized for hypericin and hyperforin? Or is it a whole plant extract? All of those are kind of three different things. But much of the product available out there and a lot of the research out there is hyper-focused on those constituents. Hyper-focused on hypericin. And we are interested in whole plant medicine. We're interested in accessible medicine. Accessible medicine is teas. And we know that St. John's wort tea works as a nerve tonic, as a tropho-restorative for the nervous system. We know that because you can drink it as a tea and you can feel it. It's absolutely there. Is it going to be as effective as a tincture that shows that red that is a marker for that specific chemistry? No, it's not. It's not going to be as strong. The tincture is stronger. The tincture has those red pigments that are indicators of different chemistry. All right. So we'll work with the tincture later. Right now we're working with the tea. So that's one of the things that we want to notice with the tea is that it does not have that red color. Can't, never gonna. And there's not a lot of aromatics. Although there's a St. John's wort smell, which is very pleasing to me. It smells like Italian food, but it doesn't smell like, basil or oregano. It's not that kind of aromatics. But it's nice. It's a very, very pleasing smell. However, I wouldn't say that it is holding anything in that steam that is therapeutic, right? It doesn't feel that way to me. And it's a very pleasant tasting tea. It's quite nice. It just tastes kind of green and floral, but not aromatic. A little bit acidic. There's not really any bitterness to it. It's very mild. With a very neutral, energetic pattern. So it doesn't have a lot of heat associated with it. I'm not tasting any of that pungency, right? And it's not astringent, although the flavonoid chemistry is quite a lot. There's a lot of flavonoid chemistry here, but there aren't a lot of tannins. There are some. It's astringent. There are definitely some tannins in there, but it isn't really strongly astringent the way that a green tea or yarrow or something like that is. So it is. It's a little bit astringent, but not terribly. And it feels relatively neutral on the fluid spectrum. Right? Like it's not going to be really directly affecting. So it's probably a little bit drying because most plants are drying. So I would feel like on the slightly drying side, definitely tonifying to the tissues, and cooling to the tissues. Cooling, tonifying, slightly drying, energetic pattern, right? So when we're looking at tissues to deal with, to use this on, or people to use this on, the people that are generally going to respond to this are probably going to be people who have patterns for which that constitutional pattern of cooling and tonifying, mostly cooling and tonifying, are going to respond well, right? So someone who's just kind of hot and inflamed, inflammation, emotionally, we can see that as anger or reactivity, emotional lability. It's right there. They're just really reactive, a body that's very, very reactive, kind of spastic and reactive and just irritated. It's going to be very cooling and calming and soothing and stabilizing to that nervous system. St. John's wort is a nervous system tropho-restorative. We've used this word before. I will write it down again in my tiny blue marker. Tropho-restorative, a plant that restores and feeds. Trophic is to feed. So feeds and restores something, right? We can have tropho-restoratives to different systems in the body. St. John's wort is one of our nervous system tropho-restoratives. And we've had a couple of those this year, right? Nettle seed and milky oats, right? Big nervous system tropho-restorative. Damiana is more of a heating, stimulating nervous system tropho-restorative. So there are a number of different plants that, when taken over a period of time, are going to feed and nourish and rebuild the nervous system. The key is looking at the secondary and tertiary effects of those plants and looking at the energetic patterns of those plants, because the energetic pattern of milky oats or Damiana or St. John's wort are all considerably different. The effect of building and nourishing that nervous system is the same, but the energetics are different. So the specific people who would respond best to each of those three plants, three different patterns. So we would look to match the person with the plant. So a St. John's wort person is likely to be kind of reactive and irritable, maybe inflamed. Maybe they have inflammatory conditions in their body, because St. John's wort is also, not only is it helpful for the nervous system, thinking the central nervous system, the brain, and the processing of information and our emotional state, but also for the peripheral nervous system, for all of the nerves that kind of collect information that goes up into that central nervous system, including these structures, the nerve bundles, the nerve fibers. When those are damaged by trauma, right? You slam your finger in a door, right? That is nerve trauma. The pain signals that it sends up to the brain saying, ow, I slammed my finger in my door, is also nerve trauma. And St. John's wort is going to be really good. One of the strengths of St. John's wort is for acute trauma to the nervous system like that. You can apply a tincture or the infused oil topically, abundantly, to traumatized tissue like that. And not only is it going to stimulate healing, because it is also a vulnerary. A vulnerary is a plant that heals tissues, right? That goes in and stimulates new cell growth. So it stimulates new cell growth in connective tissue, all of the connective tissue, but also and particularly with an affinity for nerves. So any trauma that specifically affects the nerves, St. John's wort is going to be great. And we're going to want to take it internally, and we're going to apply it topically in whatever way you can. And here we really do want those red pigmented plants. I would not use a tea of St. John's wort to soak that crushed finger in, because it does not have that stronger chemistry that I know I really, really want. But if I took a tincture and I put a dropper full of tincture in there, now that color has changed considerably. I see that red pigmentation in there now. right? And so this is going to be more, I'm going to hold it against the thing. You can't really see that increased pigmentation. Trust me, it's there. So I could put St. John's wort tincture in my tea and drink that. And that I could be using both as a soak for that traumatized tissue and also drink it internally to stimulate new tissue repair and nerve repair. St. John's wort quiets down that pain response in nerves. So it's very, very good for nerves that are just firing that pain signal, right? Ow, 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 I've been damaged, I've been damaged, I've been damaged. At some point, you know that you've been damaged, you're doing all the work, you're taking care of that, you're in the ER, you're waiting for repair. You can use the St. John's wort topically for helping just to quiet down the firing of those nerve endings and for stimulating tissue growth there. So any kind of nerve weakness, St. John's wort is also going to be really good for. So some people just have kind of reactive, again, think of that reactive pattern is going to be one that St. John is going to be really good for. Those people who tend to be just kind of really exposed to the world, right? Don't have a lot of protection or cushioning between them and the rest of the world. They don't have that ability to kind of deflect stuff. St. John's wort is going to be really good for those people to help to strengthen that nervous system and get a little bit of that distance between. Opposite to Damiana, which is a nervous system trophorestorative, but Damiana is for those people who have too much protection, too much distance between their nerves and the outside world, right? They want to increase the sensitivity of their nerves to the rest of the world, right? That would be a Damiana type person using Damiana as a trophorestorative. St. John's wort, too much nerve reactivity, too much sensory input, I need to shut it down, St. John's wort, right? Let's see. So we use St. John's wort, probably the best known use for it is for mild to moderate depression. Tremendous amounts of clinical studies on the use of St. John's wort for mild to moderate depression. Here again, let me emphasize that a lot of those studies did use standardized concentrated extracts. And if you have depression that is significant enough, a tea is not going to be enough. A tea is lovely if you just need a little bit of brightening and a little bit of like nervous system restoration. But if you really need significantly strong medicine, you're going to need to use a tincture or a standardized extract. That is, again, a full spectrum standardization, not just standardized for hypericin, which is often what you'll see on the label. Read your label and see if that wider spectrum chemistry is there. But with that wider spectrum chemistry in a strong enough dosage, St. John's wort is very well known for being very effective for specific types of depression and anxiety. So there have been a couple of studies, negative studies on St. John's wort being used for depression. And when you look at those studies, one in particular, I don't remember the name of the company. One of the primary pharmaceutical companies did a study comparing St. John's wort to Paxil for severe depression. And St. John's wort didn't work. And neither did the Paxil. What hit the waves, what hit the media was St. John's wort is not effective for depression, was the sensationalized information that was kind of spread from that. When the reality of that was, yes, that is true. St. John's wort is not effective for serious depression, and neither is a single medication, because severe depression is an incredibly complex, multifactorial condition that needs more than just a single support. Right? You need a lot of different support, and just taking St. John's wort, totally not going to be effective for serious depression, very effective for mild to moderate depression. So being aware of the severity of the condition, can you use St. John's wort as a part of a protocol, of a comprehensive protocol for severe depression? Yes, you could. You could also use Paxil as a part of a protocol for severe depression. You can use a lot of things as part of a protocol. Single intervention is not going to be enough. So just to push back against some of the research that you'll see saying St. John's wort isn't effective for depression, depends on the studies that you're looking at and how you are interpreting those studies. So, but generally, St. John's wort is going to be a very, very good, very restorative plant for that nervous system function. Again, topically for healing those nerve fibers that are inflamed or damaged or reactive, and then internally for the whole kind of structure of the nervous system. Now, if you look at the older research on St. John's wort, one of the other areas that you'll see it primarily being used for is for liver support. St. John's wort is a very, very effective liver tonic. And here also, we can talk about some of the primary concerns associated with use of St. John's wort. So St. John's wort is, along with being a vulnerary and a trophal-restorative for the nervous system, it is a hepatic tonic for the liver. It improves liver functioning. So generally, you can use St. John's wort to increase liver functionality, to just improve the health of the liver. It's going to be very good. There's a specific pathway that's activated, and you probably know this already because this is another thing that is talked about quite often when we're talking about St. John's wort. There's a specific pathway of detoxification that St. John's wort activates, and that is called the cytochrome CYP is an abbreviation for cytochrome, or CY is an abbreviation for cytochrome P450 enzyme pathway. It's actually the 3A4. So cytochrome P450 3A4 enzyme pathway is activated by St. John's wort. Long been known as a liver tonic, long been known to be a plant that you can drink just to increase liver function as in improving liver detoxification. This is the specific way that it does so, right? And so what that's going to do is it's going to increase your liver's vigilance for stuff that's not going to be there, right? Not supposed to be there. The job of the liver is to filter toxins out of the body, one of the many, many jobs of the liver. And so by activating that pathway, you're improving the clearance of waste products, metabolic waste products, hormones, lots of different things. The problem is that many medications are also specifically cleared via this pathway, the cytochrome P450 3A4 pathway. And so if you're opening up that gate and letting stuff out of the body, you are also ushering out some very important medications that need to be in there. But the liver doesn't know that. The liver is just kind of assessing the bloodstream and assessing what's available there and saying, that's not supposed to be there. I'm a liver. I know it's supposed to be in the bloodstream, and you're not it. And so it's going to escort that out. Not everything, but many things. So some very important medications are cleared via this pathway. And if you are taking those medications, you can't take St. John's wort. There's a lot of medications in that. And so one of the parts of due diligence on your part or anyone's part who wants to take St. John's wort is if you are taking medications, check. You can go online and check to see if they are cleared via this pathway in the liver. They know that. There are lists of these medications. Some of the most concerning are birth control pills. Birth control pills are cleared out of this pathway. If you're taking St. John's wort and you're also taking birth control pills, your blood levels are going to be lower because you're increasing liver function that is clearing those out of the body. Even more concern, immunosuppressants for people who are taking anti-rejection medications. Cyclosporine is one. It's a medication that people take if they've had a kidney transplant. You need to suppress the immune system because that kidney transplant, that kidney back there isn't your kidney, right? And your immune system, its job is to identify self and not self and get rid of things that are not self. That kidney is not self. So people who have had an organ transplant need to take immunosuppressive medications to quiet down the liver's, the immune system's vigilance that might attack that organ, right? But cyclosporine is cleared via that pathway. And so if you are lowering your blood levels of cyclosporine, that immune vigilance is going to increase until the immune system says, hey, what's that back there, right? And goes to investigate, and we don't want that to happen. So Depo-Provera, probably. I would check to see. I'm not sure, but I would venture to say, because it is in the class of hormones that are generally used specifically as for birth control, it is likely that it is there. Yeah. So but check and see. You can just go online and you look under, go online and look for pharmacokinetics. If you go online and you look for drug information, you'll see all this information, all and subcategories of information. That's good. That's the type of site that you want to see. And you keep on going, you look down until you find the category pharmacokinetics, kinetic movement of the medication. And that's going to show how the body clears medications out of the system. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking under pharmacokinetics, and then it'll say the medication is metabolized in the liver, and if it's real, and that's enough. If it says that the medication is cleared through the liver, that is a red flag. If it specifically says this pathway, that's an absolute no. If it says the medication is cleared via the kidneys, it's not a problem. This is a kidney enzyme. This is a liver enzyme. And so there are lots of other medications that are cleared via the kidneys, and they are not going to interact with your taking St. John's wort, right? So even if you can't find absolutely that is cleared via this pathway, if you see that it's cleared via another pathway other than the liver, you are good, right? Let's see. So that is one concern with St. John's wort. Another concern with St. John's wort is also one of the cool things about it. So St. John's wort is blooms. We use the flowers, right? The aerial portions in flowers. So as soon as it's in flower, we harvest those buds. And when does it flower? It generally tends to flower right about the summer solstice, which was just a little bit ago, which is oftentimes when it flowers. Now, climate change is a thing, and it affects a lot of plants and a lot of things. So St. John's wort blooms differently in different areas, but generally it blooms right when the sun is at its peak, right? So when it blooms, it has these little bright yellow flowers. They look like a little sunshine. St. John's wort has a really cool and fascinating relationship with the sun. So it flowers when the sun is at its peak. The flowers look like little suns. Very good. Oh, yeah, Rosa, you're welcome. It's really important information, right? It's really, really stuff you kind of have to know about when you're taking an herb. Can you talk about St. John's wort affecting photosensitivity? I'm just getting there, Abahita. Yes, so that's part of that solar relationship, right? That's one of the things that I was going to. So it blooms when the sun is at its highest, and it makes us more sensitive to the sun. And that's what Abahita is saying in the comments, that photosensitivity, that's the correct term for that. So it increases our sensitivity to the sun. This is, by the way, the reason why St. John's wort was kicked out of California, because white animals who lack any melanin would eat St. John's wort as a weed growing on land and get sunburned. It would really cause damage and pain to these animals. They don't have that melanin, and it increases photosensitivity, especially in melanin-challenged animals. So very, very fair-skinned people and very fair-skinned animals are going to have increased photosensitivity. You're going to be more sensitive to the sun, meaning you can get sunburned, you can get sun damage, discoloration, rashes, just really reactive to the sun. If you're taking it internally in large amounts, now here we generally tend not to see that in a tea, right? If you're drinking a cup of tea that has St. John's wort and a couple of other herbs in it, you're probably fine. However, if you are very, very, very white, maybe consider not, right? Just, or try it out and see. But be aware of that. The more melanin you have, the more you are likely protected from the negative effects of St. John's wort, but you'd still want to be mindful of the fact that it is increasing photosensitivity. And even Black folks, brown folks who have a lot of melanin can get an increased photosensitivity, and you can get some rashes, and you can get discoloration. You can get patches of either darker or lighter skin, which you may want to avoid that. So being mindful of that absolutely is important. Now, that is when it's taken internally. Oh, and it is more of a concern when you're taking a highly concentrated extract. So if you're taking that standardized extract, right, concentrated and standardized for hypericin, it is more likely to have that increased photosensitivity effect and less likely to be a really effective plant material. If you're taking a tincture, which is a whole plant extract, it's going to have hypericin. I know, because I can see red in that pigmentation, right? But it has all of the other plants. So this is also going to be strong. You also want to be mindful of using it, but it's probably not going to be as strong in terms of the side effects of photosensitivity as the standardized pills, the standardized concentrated pills. So yes. Now, the cool thing is St. John's wort oil, St. John's wort infused into oil, generally used topically. St. John's wort oil is protective and healing to sun exposure. So when you use St. John's wort oil, if you just apply this to your skin just by itself, it has an SPF factor of somewhere between 8 and 12. It's hard to hunt that down, primarily because that is a medical claim. And so you never see people making that medical claim for their St. John's wort, because once you do that, the FDA is on high alert and going to come after you. The estimation that I've seen from various different sources that I trust say between 8 and 12. So that's a pretty good sun protection from your fresh St. John's wort oil. So you can apply it as, or use it in a formula for sun protection, right? You can throw in some zinc and titanium, zinc oxide and titanium oxide as mineral sun protection. You can throw in some raspberry seed oil and shea butter. Lots of natural products have varying amounts of sun protection, and you can build a pretty decent sun protection agent on a base of St. John's wort. So internally, it's increasing that sensitivity to sun. Topically, it's protecting against sun exposure, and it is also one of the primary plants that I use for healing burns. So sunburns, absolutely, but also any type of just burn. If you just burn your hands, burn any kind of burn, one of the best things to do is use St. John's wort oil on it. And it is the only oil that you ever want to use directly on a burn. Generally, we don't use oils on burns, right? Because oils trap heat, right? You absolutely don't want to use an oil. They used to say to put butter on burns. That's just going to make it sizzle, right? You've got a burn, you've got heat, and oil traps things underneath, right? But St. John's wort is so profoundly healing and so profoundly effective at quieting down those rapid firing nerves that have been damaged by that burn. St. John's wort oil directly on a burn is going to really help with the pain, really help to stimulate healing and calm that down. On a sunburn, it is exceptionally good. It's going to be a wonderful thing to use after, put on some aloe, put on the things that are not oil soluble, right? Get those directly onto the tissue, and then put a layer of St. John's wort oil on after that. Very, very effective for sun protection. St. John's wort and creosote bush or chaparral, really, really good combination if you want to make a completely herbal sun protection formula. Those two are really great. You can throw some shea butter in there too, raspberry leaf. At the same time, good for after sun for the skin. Yes, yes. Abhita, you knew right where I was going for that. So consider when we're thinking about the type of people that are going to respond to St. John's wort, consider that relationship with the sun as part of that presentation. It feels to me like some types of depression that St. John's wort help with are those disconsolate, moody, I'm never going to be happy again. I don't see the light, right? There's depression, where you just can't see the light. And what would be really helpful for you is something that increases that sensitivity to the sun, right? So taking St. John's wort internally increases our sensitivity to the solar sun, but I think it also increases our nerves kind of ability, our emotional ability to feel light, to see the sun, to see that kind of that hope, right? So yeah, interesting relationship. And we see this in medicine making also. So generally, when we make a St. John's wort infused oil, we have to use the fresh flowers and some leaves. Now, again, here, I like that whole plant medicine of St. John's wort. When I make my St. John's wort oil, I'm using mostly flowers, but I use some of the leaves too, because again, as I said at the very beginning, I feel like there's beneficial medicine in those leaves that are present. I want to capture some of that. And what that means for my St. John's wort oils is they tend to not be as bright red as other oils. So sometimes people like to use just the flowers, just the flowers. Pick only those and no leaves. When you do that, when you make your oil or your tincture from those just the buds and the flowers, you're going to get a bright, beautiful red oil, right? Because you're just getting those constituents and you're not getting any of the chlorophyll that's found in the leaves. What happens when you combine red and green together, you get brown. Red and green means brown. So if there's any chlorophyll in the herbs that you're picking to make your tincture or your oil, you're going to get more on the brownish hue instead of the reddish hue. You're still going to see that red in there. I don't know if you can see, this is sort of brown, but you can see there's a deep, beautiful red color in there from those hypericins. But because I use those leaves, there's also that green, so it tends to be more on that brown spectrum. I don't mind that. Some people are really annoyed by that. It's considerably different from from making an infused oil from the dried plant, where what you're going to get is more just kind of a light green color, and you're not going to see any of those red artifacts in there. Heard about St. John's wort would be good for puncture wounds. So it would be good in a puncture wound. I would use the tincture for that. I don't think that any oils are appropriate for use in a puncture wound. When you have a deep wound, you don't want to have anything sealing that off, and oils are always going to seal, right? If you have any anaerobic organisms that got down in that deep puncture wound, I mean, you already have the tissue closing around that inflammation, closing that down. If you put another seal over that, I think that's not wise. However, if you make a wash, right, you take the tincture and you put that into some water and some salt. Salt is a drawing agent, or make a pack with clay, right? So you could take some bentonite clay, some tincture of the St. John's wort, make that into a paste and put that on that puncture wound. So the clay is drawing that out, and then you have the St. John's wort affecting some antimicrobial effects and tissue healing, anti-inflammatory, nerve calming, pain relieving effects. Along with that, that would be good, right? But I wouldn't use any type of a salve, and I wouldn't even use the oil on a puncture wound. But yes, we don't have to worry with St. John's wort. We don't have the same concerns as we would have with something like comfrey, right? Where comfrey is a cell proliferant, right? Which St. John's wort isn't really. It's a vulnerant. It's calming the tissues, and it's helping with the healing, but it's not stimulating that new cell growth the way that the allantoin and comfrey does, to such a degree that the concern with comfrey is that it's going to seal that puncture wound, right, and stop it from healing from the bottom up. I'm less concerned with St. John's wort for that, so I would definitely use the tincture for that. Yes. Let's see. So let's see if there's anything else. St. John's wort topically is also very good for improving blood flow in that area and reducing scar tissue formation. So anytime, St. John's wort is just something you should use for wounds, for burns, for sore muscles, for nerve pain, for crushing pain, really any type of first aid care. St. John's wort oil or tincture is going to be something that you're going to want to combine, certainly topically, internally, possibly, depending on if that is appropriate for your needs and safe for your body, given any medications that you're using. So yes, so that brings up, Abhijita, you are so good, you know this. So that brings up one of the other primary areas of usage for St. John's wort. It is a considerably effective antiviral. I love it to use on my face. Oh yes, hi Des. Yeah, on your face is nice, and you can use it as sun protection. So if you have, beautifully fair skin like you would definitely want to be using it on your skin. Do you use it with Shepra, with Larea for that? Or did you get tired of this? You didn't tire of the smell of Larea. What am I thinking of? But yeah, facial care, I really love it in facial care lines. So as an antiviral, St. John's wort has really significant antiviral properties for specific families. Now we want to remember that while antibacterial, plants that have an antibacterial effect can have that effect against a wide range of different bacteria, right? A lot of different classes of bacteria. Generally, when we are talking about the antiviral properties of a plant, the antiviral actions are very specific to specific families of viruses. So you can't assume that because something is antiviral to a specific virus, this has become very important in the last couple of years, that it's going to be effective against a wide range of viruses or against the virus that you are interested in. So you always want to kind of look to see when someone says, oh, this plant is antiviral, like, well, yeah, but which, right? I do love the smell, like St. John's wort infused in avocado or olive oil and cocoa butter. It smells so nice and feels so great. Yeah. I love avocado oil, man. I adore avocado oil these days. Yeah, the smell of I was talking about that earlier, Des. The smell of St. John's wort is just very pleasing to me. It's yummy to me. Families of viruses. So herpes simplex viruses, St. John's wort is going to be really effective. And here we look at some of the herpes simplex viruses tend to live in nerve endings. Think of shingles. Right? So shingles is a virus that lives in the nerves and presents in the nerves. When a shingles virus becomes active, we see lesions, herpetic lesions on the skin. That is a shingles lesion that runs along nerve pathways. Even when that lesion is healed, you can still often have what's called post-herpetic neuralgia. Neuralgia is nerve pain. Algia means pain, right? So nerve pain post-herpetic, after the virus has kind of subsided, it's gone back down into remission, you still have those nerves are still hot and inflamed and irritated. Remember, we were talking about that that excessive firing of nerves and that pain that comes from that. So St. John's wort not only quiets down those nerves, quiets down the excessive firing of those nerves, quieting down that pain. It is also specifically inhibiting that virus. Now, what we know at this time is that once a body has the herpes simplex family of viruses in their body, it doesn't appear that can be kicked out, right? Once you got it, you have it. Not that big a thing. So many people have presentations of herpes viruses. The herpes virus is a very successful virus, and lots of people have it. There's a lot of social stigma around it that should not be there because so many people have it. It's a bummer sometimes in how it presents. Sometimes it can be as a cold sore. Sometimes it can be as what were we just talking about? Whatever the hell I was just talking about, because my brain just shut off that word. Sometimes it'll be genital herpes, right? There's a lot of different ways that the virus presents, but St. John's wort is going to be one of the best plants to use, both for quieting the pain and irritation of the viral presentation, and also for inhibiting the viral replication in that area, so it can go back into remission, so you can just be shingles. Thank you, Teresa. I don't know why my brain just kicked that out. Said we just talked about that and kicked it off the list. So there have been also some very cool studies on Hypericum's ability to treat HIV. So as an adjunct, I mean, there have been a lot of studies on herbs for HIV, for inhibiting HIV replication, but really cool research on St. John's wort for that. Certain types of hepatitis also respond very well to St. John's wort. And here again, we see that as a liver tonic and specifically as an antiviral and an antimicrobial, it has some antimicrobial effects also. Given hepatitis, it might be a very good compound for that. And also for certain types of flu, St. John's wort has been effective. So use of St. John's wort for any of those, but really the herpes simplex viruses, I generally tend to go, St. John's wort is one of the 3 that I use, sometimes 4, depending on what I'm making. But St. John's wort, lemon balm, we talked about this earlier in the year when we were talking about lemon balm. So St. John's wort, lemon balm, and licorice, and Larea, chaparral, or creosote bush. Those 4 plants are all really, really effective, either applied topically or taken internally, depending on the person, for pretty much any presentation of the herpes simplex type of viruses. Again, depending on the individual. So yes, thank you for bringing up the viral, the antiviral qualities of St. John's wort. It's really effective. Let's see. So just a little bit more talk about the cytochrome P450 enzyme pathway induction, because it's a big thing with people talking about St. John's wort. It's as though St. John's wort is the only plant that induces that pathway. So things either turn on a pathway or turn off a pathway. So they're called inducers or inhibitors. So they can induce the pathway, activate it, they can inhibit it, shut it down. The primary inducer of that pathway, St. John's wort, is the one that everyone thinks of. There's a primary inhibitor of that pathway. Who knows what the primary inhibitor of the cytochrome P450 enzyme pathway, the one that people are always talking about as a concern when taking medications? You cannot take this thing because it is an inhibitor of the pathway. So type it in and then also tell me what it would do if you are inhibiting that pathway. What's happening to the blood levels of medications in your body? So we know that the blood levels go down if you're taking St. John's wort because it's activating that pathway and clearing. It's increasing the clearance of that of those compounds out of that pathway. What happens if you are inhibiting that pathway? Anyone got an idea? It's going to grapefruit. Des, I knew you'd know. Yeah, grapefruit. Grapefruit is an inhibitor of that pathway. So an inhibitor of that pathway is shutting down that pathway, and that means that it's going to increase your levels of your medications. So grapefruit is seen as the great inhibitor. St. John's wort is seen as the great inducer. So many plants have cytochrome P450 induction and inhibition actions. So many different plants do. Garlic and rosemary and red wine, all those three things, consider how much of most of our diets have garlic and rosemary and red wine in them. All of those have significant amounts of induction or inhibition. Garlic has two different compounds that are both inhibitors and inducers of this pathway. A lot of plants, kava, dandelion root. There's a lot of herbs that have effects on the cytochrome P450 enzyme system, not as strongly as these two, as the grapefruit and St. John's wort. That's why they are kind of held up. But we are in our relative infancy when it comes to understanding this pathway. And so people tend to get really freaked out about St. John's wort and grapefruit. And you want to have some concern, absolutely, if you are taking a medication about things that are going to affect blood levels of that. But I think that we do not have nearly as strong a grasp on that as we think that we do. And we think that all we have to do is stop taking St. John's wort or grapefruit, and we're not having any effect on that pathway, on that liver pathway. And you totally are, because so many plants that we eat and drink are going to have an effect there. So I think that maybe we can kind of ratchet down our concern about St. John's wort and possibly grapefruit. And also, if you do take a medication that has those, that is cleared via that pathway, also be mindful of that, right? It's a complex situation, but I'm saying that's even more complex than we think that it is. And so just consider that when you're reading information on this pathway and people are setting this absolute idea that, you know, St. John's wort and grapefruit, and get rid of those and you don't have any concerns. Also, and I'll leave you with this, what happens if you take both of them? Does it cancel out? Do you still get the therapeutic effects of the St. John's wort, but you also get to keep your cyclosporine levels or your birth control levels intact? I don't know the answer, but it is something to just kind of think about. Yeah. So don't take all those with blood pressure medications. Exactly. Blood pressure medications, a lot of cardiac medications are cleared via that pathway as well. Yeah, lots of medications are. There you go. There's St. John's wort. It's a fabulous plant. It takes some work to use. You do have to make fresh plant medicine to get really good, strong medicine. You can make a tea. You can use the tea, and it's going to be helpful. It's going to be a lovely nervine. It's going to be a delightful, happy-making, calming, nerve-calming, soothing tea. I really like the tea, by the way. One last thing. I like the tea and the tincture for insomnia taken during the day. For insomnia at night that comes from that kind of reactive nervous system during the day, right? Insomnia isn't something that just happens right away as soon as the lights go out. For some bodies, it is accumulation of this nerve reactivity and spasticity all during the day that doesn't have any relief, that doesn't have a way to get rid of it. If you are using St. John's wort during the day to kind of quiet and soothe that nervous system, say, I know, baby, it is a weird world out there, and there's a lot to be reactive about, right? You never want to minimize your body's or any other body's very real concerns about how freaky the world is these days. It's a freaky world, and also we can like have some calm and some grace around it, and that's what St. John's wort gives us. But if we're taking that during the day, then it can be for some bodies for whom that accumulation of reactivity during the day results in insomnia at night. Sometimes during St. John's wort during the day is going to be really effective for them, where they're, especially if they're like taking herbs or medications for insomnia and it's not working at night. Maybe nighttime isn't the problem. Maybe it's that accumulation of stuff during the day. And so using some type of a tropho-restorative, again, maybe St. John's wort isn't the one, and maybe you need to go to milky oats or damiana or nettle seed or one of the other ones, right? So thanks for joining me today for St. John's wort. Don't remember, I just got back into town and I didn't look at my calendar. What's next week? I don't know, but it'll be something next week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. You have a beautiful sunny day too. Oh, Teresa, it is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for showing up. It's fun to have class with y'all, and I will see you next Monday. Okay, bye-bye.